Okay, I need you to sit down for this one, because ESPN just dropped a report that has this entire fan base losing their minds, and honestly, in my own personal opinions, I don't blame a single one of you. We are talking about the Chicago Bears potentially, and I stress potentially, landing an all-pro, three-time Pro Bowl running back. Not a mid-tier trade candidate. Not a camp body. One of the best running backs breathing air in the National Football League right now. Welcome back to Chicago Bears Hub. I'm Aj Maestro, and before we get into every single layer of this story, I have to take a second, because we just crossed 1,000 subscribers on this channel. 1,000 of you decided this was worth your time, worth your subscribe button, worth sitting through these breakdowns with me week after week, and I don't take that lightly. Thank you. Genuinely, but we are not stopping there. New target, new mountain to climb together. 2,000 subscribers. So if you haven't hit that button yet, now's the time, because this Jonathan Taylor story is about to take you on a ride. Let's get into the actual report, because I want you to have the full picture before I give you my breakdown. According to ESPN's Ben Solak, in a piece forward once you actually sit with it, he points out that DeAndre Swift had a strong season in 2025, but that reliability has always been the question mark with Swift throughout his career, dealing with injuries pretty much everywhere he's played. Now look, in my own personal opinions, I think that's a little harsh. The guy plays through stuff. He's tough. He had a genuinely great year for this offense. But I do understand the broader point Solak is making. And then he goes after Kyle Monangai a little bit too, calling him a likable thumper who isn't built for more than around 10 carries a game. And again, in my own personal opinions, I push back on that some. Because remember, Monangai was a rookie last year finding his footing. And a lot of his best snaps came in the second half of the season once he really got up to speed with the offense. But you see where this is going. Solak's whole argument is that if this Bears offense is going to take the leap from a good unit into a genuinely elite top 5 offense in football, which, by the way, is absolutely possible given how they closed out last season, then the running back room needs a true bell cow, a true difference maker. Someone who can single-handedly change what a defense has to game plan for. And that's where Jonathan Taylor comes in. Because this guy is not a projection, he's not a maybe, he is a proven dominant force at the position. Last season alone with the Colts, in 17 games, Taylor racked up 323 carries for nearly 1,600 rushing yards, 18 rushing touchdowns, 4.9 yards per carry, and he averaged over 93 yards per game. 18 rushing touchdowns. Let that number sink in for a second. That is elite production, all-pro level production, and he's still relatively young in football years, sitting right in the middle of his 20s with plenty of tread left on the tires according to most of what's being said around the league. As reported by multiple outlets covering this story, there's a real belief that Taylor should have been in the conversation for Offensive Player of the Year last season. And when a player is drawing that kind of praise and still gets floated in trade rumors, you know there's a real legitimate storyline here, not just some random speculation. Now let's talk about why this would matter so much to this specific Bears offense. Because it's not just about adding one good player to a roster, it's about what that player unlocks around him. Picture this offensive line for a second. Joe Thuney, Jonah Jackson, Darnell Wright, Garrett Bradbury, Logan Jones anchoring the middle at center, and Dan Roshbach coaching this group up front. This unit has been building real chemistry, and it's already opened up huge lanes for Swift and Monangai. Now drop a home run hitter like Jonathan Taylor into that mix. A guy who can hit the second level and just be gone, and in my own personal opinions, this offense stops being good and starts being genuinely unfair to defend. Because here's the ripple effect nobody's talking about enough. When a defense has to respect a runner like Taylor at that level, they cannot afford to load up on Caleb Williams and this receiving room the same way. That takes real pressure off Luther Burden, off Rome Odunze, off Colston Loveland, off every single pass catcher on this roster. Loveland especially could have an absolutely massive season if defenses are forced to keep extra bodies in the box to deal with Taylor. Because that opens up the middle of the field in a way this offense hasn't fully had access to yet. But, and you knew there was a but coming, this move comes with real complications, and I want to walk you through every single one of them. Because this isn't as simple as just snapping your fingers and adding a superstar. First, there's the financial piece. Taylor is currently in the final year of his contract, carrying a cap hit right around $15.5 million this season, with a little under $7 million of that guaranteed. That's the last year of his deal, which means whichever team ends up with him, if this trade actually happens, is going to have to sit down almost immediately and work out an extension. Because nobody trades real draft capital for a rental running back and then lets him walk in free agency months later. And that extension is going to be expensive. Running backs on second contracts at that level typically aren't cheap, and when you stack that on top of everything else this front office already has on its plate, the numbers start to matter a lot. And speaking of everything else on the plate, let's talk about what this roster actually looks like right now and who potentially gets squeezed out if Taylor arrives. DeAndre Swift is coming off a genuinely strong season for Chicago. 223 attempts, over 1,000 rushing yards, 9 rushing touchdowns, 4.9 yards per carry, and just under 68 yards per game. Kyle Monangai chipped in 161 attempts for 783 yards and 5 touchdowns. A lot of that production coming down the stretch as he found his rhythm. Combined, that duo put up over 1,800 rushing yards last season, which is a massive part of why this offense finished top 10 across the board. 6th in total yards, 10th in passing, 3rd in rushing. So you're not talking about replacing a broken running back room here. You're talking about potentially disrupting something that was already working at a high level. If the Bears actually pull this trade off, in my own personal opinions, at least one of Swift or Monangai almost certainly becomes part of the return package or gets moved elsewhere. Because you cannot realistically carry 3 expensive, heavily used backs on one roster and keep everybody happy with touches. Monangai, still on his rookie contract, would probably be the more logical piece to attach to a trade offer given his cost efficiency versus what Swift represents against the cap. And there's also roster fallout underneath all of that. A guy like Roschon Johnson, who was expected to handle a bruising, short yardage role last season but battled injuries and barely saw the field, becomes an obvious cut candidate if this move happens, freeing up over $1 million in cap space in the process. Now here's the piece of this that I think is genuinely the most important, and it's something Solak himself pointed to in his reasoning. The timing. This isn't necessarily a training camp move or a week 1 splash. As reported by ESPN, the more realistic path here is the Bears potentially being active around the trade deadline in November, specifically hunting for what's being described as a field-tilting running back to give this offense an additional gear heading into a playoff push. That framing matters a lot, because it tells you this isn't some desperate reactionary move. It's a calculated, we are already good and we want to become dangerous type of move. And Ryan Poles, if he's going to go down this road, is not going to hand the Colts a cheap package. He's going to have to give up real draft capital, likely multiple picks, to pry a player of Taylor's caliber away from Indianapolis, especially with Taylor playing at the level he's playing at right now. But here's the thing about this front office that I think gives this whole scenario some real credibility. The Bears have built this roster on the back of a ton of rookie contracts. Caleb Williams, Burden, Loveland, Odunze, Monangai, all still on relatively cheap deals for the next several seasons. That gives Poles real financial flexibility to make a move like this work, to absorb Taylor's current deal and still have room to extend him, while also taking care of the other big financial commitments coming down the pipeline. Guys like Darnell Wright, who just had his option picked up and is working toward an extension, and eventually paying Caleb Williams the money a franchise quarterback commands. So where does this actually leave us? You've got a Bears offense that's already humming, already top 10 across the board, already flashing signs of being genuinely elite heading into year 2 of the Ben Johnson era. And now, you've got a legitimate, credible national report suggesting the front office could go out and add arguably the best pure runner available anywhere in football to that mix. If it happens, and again, this is a prediction, not a done deal, this offense would have a real case to be the best in the entire NFL. Full stop. Every single skill position player benefits. Caleb Williams benefits from lighter boxes and a defense that can't just tee off on him. Loveland, Burden, Odunze all benefit from defenses being forced to respect the run at a level they've genuinely never had to worry about with this roster before. And in my own personal opinions, if the Bears somehow manage to pull this off without gutting the rest of the roster and manage to actually extend Taylor long-term, this stops being a playoff hopeful conversation and starts being a legitimate championship conversation. But I'll be honest with you, and this is where I land personally on the whole thing, I don't think you make this move unless the price is genuinely right. Unless it's a deal you truly cannot walk away from. Taylor takes on real risk here too. He'd be walking into a brand new offense, a brand new city, and there's no guarantee he even wants to sign a long-term extension with whichever team trades for him instead of testing true free agency down the road. That's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of trust that has to exist on both sides for this to actually make sense beyond just being a fun hypothetical. So now I want to hear from you, because I already know this fan base is split right down the middle on this one. Some of you are ready to mortgage a chunk of the draft capital right now for a guaranteed, proven bell cow. Others are saying protect the future, don't disrupt a running back room that's already working, and don't hand out a massive second contract to a player at a position that tends to decline fast. Drop yes or no in the comments below on whether you'd actually pull the trigger on this trade if the Bears had the opportunity, and tell me what you'd be willing to give up to get it done. And that's where I'm leaving this one for today. Before you go anywhere though, smash that like button. It genuinely helps push this channel further than you'd think. Drop your honest take on this Jonathan Taylor situation down in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're not subscribed yet, get on it, because we just hit 1,000 and we are chasing 2,000 next. And I want every single one of you here for that next milestone. This is Chicago Bears Hub. I'm Ajla Maestro, and as always, no filter all the time.